I know you're new at this, so am I. But I just want to ask you a couple quick questions, understanding that we only have 5 minutes dialogue, and then I'll come around in the second round. So can you tell me what your opinion is of the role of school leadership teams in our schools?
Critically important. The research out of Chicago, Tony Bright's work is very clear. You need to have strong leadership. You have to have strong teachers. You have to have parent empowerment. You have to have strong curriculum. You have to have systems and structures. All of that boils down to, if you have a team, it's much more powerful and doable than if you have individuals. Critically important.
Do you believe that parents are full partners in the education of their children?
They are cornerstones of those teams. And that's why we speak of parent empowerment, not parent engagement.
Good. So about special ed, how many special ed students are there in New York City, and how much is being spent on these students? And I asked that question of the state education department, but they don't have those stats.
So in New York City, it's about 20% of our students, of the 1.1 million, are special education students. So that's about, what, 220,000 students, are students with disabilities. And in terms of how much is being spent, I'm going to defer to our chief financial officer.
We'll have to get back to you with the specifics on the exact.
Give or take. Do you have a round out figure?
Several $1 billion.
Okay. So you'll get back to me on that,
Yes.
the details, okay, good. Now, I've been told, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are many schools in New York City that are at 100% fair student funding formula. Why are some schools at 100% and many other schools are not, when basically the needs of all the schools are the same? How did that happen, and what are you doing to correct that?
Yeah, so Senator, thank you. So it's a result of the lack of funding for the Campaign for Fiscal Equity. So what we did is we made, prior to my arrival, but the system made a conscious decision that schools that were not performing well, we would raise their floor to 100% because we know that they needed those resources. We also had some schools, they were smaller schools, they were special focused schools, et cetera, that were at 100%. We didn't take their money from them. And in the interim, what we've done with the incredible support of our mayor, the support of our city council, is try to add local tax levy dollars to raise the floor of the schools that are not quite at 100%. That being said, from an equity perspective, we're looking at new resources, whatever new resources we have, to invest in those schools that are not yet at 100%.
Well, I think it's an imperative that we get those schools up as far as they can. And as you know, the mayor put 3% to raise it up to at least 90%, but it should be more than that.
I agree.
And there's going to be a big fight if that doesn't happen. Let me just say that loud and clear. But let me ask you about opt-out. How many students in New York City have opted out of the examinations 3 to 8? If you know, and do you have the details broken out by specific schools?
We do have that. I don't have that at my fingertips.
Okay.
We'll follow up and get you all those details.
Okay,
it's
but you have that,
it's
then.
a relatively very small
Because
percentage.
I've asked that of the state education department. It seems as though that they don't have that information.
We have that number. We'll get that to you, sir.
Okay, good. So, as far as if you got additional monies, would you allocate that to reducing class size? Because in the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, the court decision talked about, and CFE talked about, lowering class size so that teachers will be able to deal with the students more effectively is a key to guaranteeing them the constitutional right under the state education law.
Yes, sir. So lowering class size is just a matter of money, and I don't say that facetiously, but it is. But what I will say to you is we know for a fact in New York City that when schools get additional resources, the first thing they do is hire counselors and teachers. So there is a need, there is a hunger. The other thing that we hear very, 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 very strongly from our schools that are not 100% is that they don't have enrichment programs, they don't have after-school programs, they don't have art programs, they don't have fine art programs. So increased funding will contribute to rounding out the educational experience of our students.
Charter schools. How many and how much is being spent on charter schools in New York City?
That number?
$2.1 billion.
2.1 billion.
Correct.
How many schools?
I don't believe I have that information.
How much is being spent on rental for
70.
charter schools?
69.
I'm sorry, what?
$69 million.
69 million. Okay, thank you. My time's up.